everyone, and welcome to R2I and Adobe's Reinventing Digital Experiences Higher Education Roundtable, featuring Digital Transformation Story by the University of Michigan. We are just getting set up now. We'll wait for a few more minutes to allow folks to join, and then we will go ahead and get started. Thank you. All right, it looks like we are just about 4 after the hour, so we're going to go ahead and kick things off. I'll turn it over to Nick Christie, Adobe AVP.
Hey everyone, super excited to be here today and appreciate everybody joining us virtually. We've got a pretty packed agenda forward to today. We've got some really cool story with University of Michigan. I wanted to kind of kick things off and just set the table about the overall theme for today is going to be talking about really kind of the gap in the connected student experience that we see. And then really how we at Adobe can help fill that gap and kind of bring higher education to a more connected experience. So looking forward to the content today and everybody's interaction as we go forward. So just a little bit of background on who we have in the meetup today. Sean Green. Sean, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Sean Green, Manager of Web and Application Services at the University of Michigan. Yeah, I'll give a little bit more info about my role and duties. But yeah, when my slide deck comes around.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're excited to have Sean and talking about the University of Michigan's transformational story, which has been happening over a number of years and you know, just really super interesting, the advances they've made at the university with Adobe's technology and R2I's help. So speaking of which, we also have Chris Chadnicki. Chris and Anastasia with R2I. If you guys want to introduce yourself briefly.
Sure, Chris Chadnicki. I'm SVP of Biz Dev and one of the co-founders at R2I. We've been working with Adobe and University of Michigan for many years now, and look forward to today's discussion. I'm going to talk a bit about bridging the gap of technology to connection of the student and others.
Perfect.
Hi, great. I'm Anastasia or Anna. I'm a CX strategist here at R2I. And today I'll be discussing the gaps in the connected experience and talking about a few trends that'll be impacting the future of higher education.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So as I mentioned, we really want to kind of kick it off and start you know, specifically around what we see some of those gaps being. Talk a little bit about how we foresee technology kind of help bridging that gap. And then we're going to bridge over to Sean and really kind of get into the University of Michigan's transformation story. And then we'll bring it all home with Q&A and you know, a little networking time at the end. So without further ado, I will let the smart people in the meeting kind of take over from here and talk a little bit about kind of what they're here to to kind of bring forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I will be kicking it off with some discussion around the gaps in the connected students experience. So flipping forward to the next slide. We are a CX first digital agency. So this means that we work with our higher education clients to learn who their audiences really are and understand the experiences of all of their customers, including students, faculty, administrative employees, parents, donors, and more. And we work to document how those customers can leverage digital tools and technology to achieve their goals, whether that means applying to become a student, enrolling and managing a course load, or taking classes virtually for the first time. And understanding these life cycles allows us to prioritize key business goals from the university's perspective and recommend digital transformation roadmaps to reach these goals. Great. So our primary goal with our higher education clients is to increase prospective and new student engagement. And we reach these goals by leveraging both business and digital objectives. It's key that any marketing plan integrates the business goals within a multi-channel digital objective to create a seamless student experience. For example, we can increase student engagement by delivering consistent, personalized experiences across channels. And we can reduce time to market with new student experiences by increasing agility and efficiency of experience delivery, and drive student portal expansion through scaled experiences that support web, portal, and mobile apps. It's also extremely important that we are consistently taking a temperature check of the industry and monitoring emerging trends while we're delivering on these goals. So on the next slides, I'll be discussing some key trends facing higher education in the changing landscape. So one of the most impactful changes to the higher education space is the shift toward virtual options at a really rapid rate. For more than a decade, we have seen growth in post-secondary alternatives, including massively open online courses and industry-driven certifications, but online options have not yet or had not yet been adopted widely by traditional higher education institutions. Prior to the pandemic, less than 5% of college budgets were dedicated to IT spending, and just 1/3 of students had any online college experience at all. And this shifted by necessity. The pandemic proved that effective education is possible virtually, and potential students now expect virtual options moving forward. And this extends not only to classes, but to all forms of communication, from tours to info sessions and marketing. Therefore, colleges and universities must now prioritize digital transformation in the post-pandemic landscape to guide their institutions toward the future. And the next insight, as a result of this move to virtual and the economic unrest caused by the pandemic, we've also seen major shifts in student profile. In 2021, college enrollments are down by 500,000. And higher education institutions must now rethink how they attract students and what types of students to accept. Institutions are now competing for a shrinking number of traditional students, and we've seen steady enrollment decline since 2012 as the number of high school graduates steadily decline and college prices increase. The pandemic itself accelerated this as many potential traditional students elected to take a gap year to reduce risk of exposure and cost. As you can see here, 29% of traditional students said they plan to take a break and delay enrollment. It's therefore important for higher education institutions to think about expanding to include more non-traditional audiences, as older adults, veterans, working adults, and parents are becoming more potential students themselves. And it's key that recruitment and retention strategies become more flexible to adjust to changing student needs and demographics. And then the final insight we have here, as we move into a more virtual and diversified higher education future, it's key to leverage data to develop a connected student experience and create a sense of belonging from the beginning of the prospective student period through alumni relations, so the full experience. Many students are reporting feeling disconnected from their schools. Each time they have to re-enter their information or take extra steps to find information, it makes them feel like one of thousands of anonymous students. 78% of students say personalized experiences show their college cares about them and their success. And on the other side, 65% of staff at universities and colleges report that it's difficult to get the information they need to actually help students achieve their goals. By integrating data profiles and using them to deliver these personalized experiences, both digitally and in person, institutions are able to deepen that relationship between themselves and their target audiences for the long term and for successful relationships. And this is key to retaining and gaining new students.
All right, so I'm going to talk about how technology can bridge out some of these gaps. I think that of many industries that we work with, higher ed is certainly one that's been impacted over the last few years most significantly, whether it's from your media budgets or being able to move to a virtual kind of environment quickly and rapidly. All the pivots that you've had to make over the last few years have had to be accelerated, and I think that is sort of one of the keys, how you've actually pivoted and accelerated your changes and recognize, if you will, where you have gaps. So if you can move Brittany to the next one. Yep. So, what we have seen with some of our clients and Adobe's clients, such as Maryland and Fortis and UCLA and Michigan, is that you really need to focus on key pillars. And we look at the pillars as being that student experience, your digital foundation, and then the integrated data. But they mean nothing unless you can actually make them work together, make them truly integrated. The key here is not so much like having the best content management system or market automation system or CRM, or the most data that comes in. I mean, that really is useless, unless you can actually leverage that. And you need to leverage it in such a way that you can bring that right message to the right student at the right time and on the right channel. So not just the website, obviously, but where they are. And bring that personalized experience to that student or that target audience, and you want to drive that engagement through that process. So we believe in these pillars, and you need to make sure that these are core to your planning. Okay, Brittany, there we go. So, some of the gaps, I mean, working, if you will, left to right, universities and colleges, you have a lot of different types of personas that you have to navigate, right? Whether you have new applicant or the current student or the part-time versus full-time student, the graduate, so on and so forth, all the way through family members. And the ways you connect with them can be overwhelming at times, frankly. With that said, the expectation of the student is just like, going on TikTok. It's immediate, and they want, to have, if you will, some sort of connection in a very rapid manner, or else they'll move on. So recognizing that, you've got a lot at play here. You've got a lot of different types of, if you will, systems and technologies that are out there that can be leveraged, that can help you. Looking at that engagement, you have the social, all these different touch points that can occur. So you need to make sure that you have that foundation in place, that core element. And what we look at is ranging from CMS down to having a data warehouse or data lake, and using things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. All can bring that experience and that engagement to light so that you can actually get your job done. Okay, Brittany, there we go. So, how do you do that? How are you going to build for what's next? And we look at this, from, if you will, the data perspective of starting at the sort of anonymous level. You know nothing, if you will, about that student, and then how do you start building on that? How do you take it, from the anonymous, type of person all the way through a known person? How do you create that engagement, especially in this world of instant gratification? So you want to make sure as a marketer that you orchestrate your technology and data to create that end-to-end experience, creating that engagement across the experience channel, taking that anonymous, persona and building on that, using your own first-party data all the way through third-party data. And you need to be able to, do this in an integrated manner so you can start to build out your and solve problems around recruitment, nurturing, enrollment. That's if you have a student portal, your LMS system, and even through alumni and giving and touch points involved with, understanding where they are in their life. So those are the kind of things that you want in an ideal platform. And frankly, that's the kind of thing that Adobe can bring to the table in a connected manner in their Adobe Experience platform. They've got products that handle the CMS, that manage the analytics and data, that behind the scenes can bring in all that information in a advanced way using artificial intelligence to create those touch points that are automated. Okay. So lastly, quickly, it can be overwhelming, and everybody's at a different maturity level with their marketing initiative, right? You need a roadmap. I think one of the, some of the things that are key are, especially the lessons learned with COVID, if you will, which we're still in the midst of, obviously. You need to be as nimble as possible. You need to be as efficient, and you need to be data-driven. So how do you kind of figure that out? From a very high level, you need to actually, start with doing an assessment of your marketing technology stack. What do you have in place? What are you using? How are you using it? How integrated is it? Is your data, healthy? Then you have to turn that into, okay, where are you getting the value? What is truly that realization of that investment in that marketing technology? In some ways, we've seen organizations get rid of technology, whether it's like one department started and there's kind of this decentralized way of using technologies. They realize the power of centralizing that, having centers of excellence. And then, moving on to, coming up with what that roadmap is. What is your strategy? What are your priorities? How do you align your internal staff, your outside organizations, agencies you're using, and technologies so that they're unified and working towards, the right direction, if you will. And then really, ultimately, once you get those wheels turning, empowering those decision makers, right? Making sure you got the right KPIs in place that you're measuring and tracking, and that you're able to build on those, as you get more advanced in your maturity level. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Sean now, and he's going to kind of walk you through their example and where they are in their maturity.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Good afternoon. Good morning to you those out west. Appreciate you inviting me to speak at this event. I was telling some of the others here, Nick and I go back. He's pretty much been hands-on from our transformation from the get-go. So it's great to see. Nick was with R2I and now with Adobe. So it's been great having that connection. But Chris and Nick, when you asked me to speak, I looked at the speaker list or the attendee list, and you didn't tell me Michigan State was going to be on here. So, but come on, I mean, it's there's going to be a slide and picture that if they are indeed on here, that they'll recognize a little bit.
Yeah, well, we couldn't tell you that beforehand, Sean, because we were afraid.
Right? Yeah, I might not have agreed. But really, it's great to connect with all of you here. I know we have some shared challenges and also some shared success stories that are unique to education. Again, I'm Sean Green. I'm the manager of Web and Application Services here at the University of Michigan. Been with the university for over 20 years now, and I'm primarily responsible for 1,000+ public-facing websites. And I manage a team that includes web administrators, a UX specialist, a QA team, and an instructional designer. I'd like to start building a little context, giving you an overview here at the University of Michigan. Maybe the previous slide there, Brittany. We do have 45,000 students over 3 campuses, with Ann Arbor being the main campus with about 31,000 students. We also have campuses in Dearborn and Flint, Michigan. We have over 18,000 undergraduate students in the College of LSA, which is Literature, Science, and Arts. LSA does have 125 global programs on 6 continents, and our top 3 undergraduate majors are Econ, psychology, and computer science. First-year students come in averaging about 3.9 GPA, 1440 on their SATs, and 33 on their ACTs. That's about what Nick got, I know, all of his studies. We have about 900 administrative staff, about 1,000 instructional positions here in LSA. Most of our campus had been remote since last March with limited on-site courses. But this fall, we're predominantly in person, though there are still a significant number of hybrid and remote courses going on. So the previous to our engagement here with R2I and Adobe, our web environment was really a disjointed experience for students and others. We were using the vignette and open text platform. There was no consistent navigation. Each site was set up differently, and the purpose of the sites weren't clearly defined. We were just throwing up content because somebody thought it might be good just to show it online without any really thought. So we didn't really know what we were trying to accomplish with our sites and who our audiences were. We weren't telling the stories we wanted to tell, and especially with prospective students. Their first touch point with us is likely, our websites. They're sitting on the couch, looking at different schools and colleges and pulling up web pages to look at what's offered and kind of get a vibe of your university. So, we weren't giving a lot of thought to the messaging there and what were we trying to convey to those prospective students. We had a really high TCO, total cost of ownership, for our previous web environment. We were hosting it on site. We had about 9 servers on the 3 to 4 year upgrade cycle. We had 1.5 sysadmins to keep it running and 3 developers. Upgrades and patching took a long time, going through 9 servers, deploying the same patches and updates. If something broke or was sticky, and it was a really big headache every time an update came through. We had about 25 different versions of code powering our websites. You can imagine it made it nearly impossible to support. We'd have to look at what was going on with each site as a support ticket came in, because there were nuances with the way sites were built. Nothing consistent, even navigation, the way events were displayed. And I know it's hard to see, but you can see there's a lot of dead space in those sites that are pictured there on this slide. And also there was inconsistent navigation. Some people threw on, wanted 8 events. Some people wanted a bunch of news items and some subtle differences. So it was really hard. People just browsing through our websites didn't have a consistent experience. There were slightly different versions of code that also made enhancements difficult. So when we were trying to do an upgrade,
and Dr. Leon can talk more.
I'm getting a little feedback here. Is that me or?
It's not just my word, but
I think
in the
when they
spirit of all-
get off mute, everyone could take a moment to mute your speaker. Thank you.
Good, got it. Cool.
तो उसके साथ भी तुमको झेलना पड़ेगा। राहुल का किया था वहाँ भी झेला था, ठीक है। मार्वलेस का किया वहाँ भी झेले, ठीक है। तो जब तुम इंडियन कस्टमर के साथ, एशियन कस्टमर के साथ काम करोगे तो ये ज्ञान तुमको मिलता रहेगा, ठीक है।
Hey Brittany, can you mute all the phones?
Yeah, I think I just found it.
Cool.
Should be good to go. Sorry, Sean.
No problem. So the system, the CMS we were using then too, the OpenText vignette platform, our content editors didn't want to use the system. It was buggy and clunky. And that made, people, they didn't want to edit and update their content. So content on websites were outdated. I still laugh with our team. The system, we had it 4 times throughout the week. We had it restart automatically at 5 a.m. just to keep things running. We found the only way to keep it running was to have a restart of the entire CMS. And it was really terrible. So change was needed. Next slide, Brittany. So we felt as exasperated as this guy here at our football game. This was actually Michigan State pulled a big upset on us and left our entire stadium completely silent and exasperated. but we had similar feelings about our websites. You know, so how do we fix it? We decided to do an external review of our websites and web processes, how we make edits. We decided to do the external review to help validate the findings, so no one group would have bias in our assessment. We also felt we were all too close to the work to objectively evaluate the current state. And also at the time, we didn't have expertise in-house to do this extensive of an evaluation. So we looked around and we chose R2I to help gather the current state of our web environment and also provide us with some next steps. We spent 6 months looking at our entire web environment, doing over 60 stakeholder interviews with anyone that would possibly visit our websites. These are, you know, prospective students, current students, alumni, donors, faculty, staff, people who wanted to go to one of our museums, or just somebody, you know, who may not have any affiliation or tie to the university at all. So R2I did a great job coordinating those stakeholder interviews and compiling the data. So they also did a lot of research to better define who our audiences were. You know, I mentioned earlier, we were just pushing content without really knowing who was consuming it. So we got a good status there. The final report was actually about 70 pages long, and we were able to share this with our dean and leadership. We were able to get buy-in from recommendations that R2I gave us, and we were able to move forward. We evaluated 10 different CMS platforms, narrowed it down to 7 pretty quickly, and we ended up choosing Adobe Experience Manager, the managed solution, which was a big change from us hosting our web environment on site. Next slide. So what next? In a subsequent engagement, we hired R2I to help implement AEM as our web platform. Our designers and developers worked with R2I configuring the software. We customized some of the components and general knowledge transfer. Our team took Adobe training, both developer and content editor training, and we quickly became self-sufficient building an AEM. There was a lot of great knowledge transfer. We have a great team of developers who've done some amazing things since then with AEM. It's fairly easy to build and configure and do some customizations. We gave much more thought to the purpose and goals of our site once we knew, you know, from that report, and then discussing internally, you know, what were we trying to do? Our marketing team in-house was active in redesigning our pages, and it gave a lot of thought to the content we were putting up. So there were a lot of changes. We implemented an analytics setup on all of our sites, so we could begin making data-driven solutions about our sites. Previous to, you know, this transformation, there were a few people using Google Analytics here and there. Some people had some other, you know, just web page counters built in behind the scenes. So there was really no data. We didn't know what was going on. But we implemented Google Analytics. We do Crazy Egg and also Bright Edge, if you're familiar with those analytics tools. So now we were able to tell, you know, were people coming and how were they behaving? Were they behaving how we wanted them to or expected them to? So where are we now? We now have over 160 sites in AEM, all with consistent site design, navigation, and a common code base. We allow for some editing latitude for our developers, or for our content editors, which keeps them happy. You know, they're able to position their content in different areas around the page, do some full width stuff. But really behind the scenes is a common and consistent framework that we know is proven out to be the experience that we want our users to have. We now use the AEM platform for our college and department intranets too. So our developers did a great job tying in SSO, the single sign-on, and making connecting to our intranet seamless. People are already logged into their email. They can click right in if they have access to the pages they're going for. And having an AEM also is a familiar platform for our content editors. You know, a lot of our editors are editing our public websites, they're also able to edit their department intranets as well. So same platform, it made it a lot easier to do both. We now have an LMS for training for our CMS. Our trainers build a tremendous training and open lab setup in Canvas. We have 2 open labs a week, and we also have on-demand AEM training set up. So last March, within about a week or so, we were able to pivot all of our training to virtual, online and on demand, seamless. I was really happy with this effort. We didn't miss a beat because everything was online. So now we have many editors editing their content on a daily basis that we've seen. And the site content is far more up to date. News is published. We have speakers, highlighted, and events are all up to date. And this is a lot different than our previous web environment when people just didn't even want to use the system at all. So we partnered with Adobe and R2I to help with security testing of our sites, our upgrade from 5.6 to 6.1. And we've done 2 significant upgrades on our own. And we're currently running version 6.5 for those of you familiar with AEM. And since we've also used Adobe and R2I for general consulting and advice, and also a lot of networking. There's a lot of times I'll ask Nick, hey, do you know of anybody who's doing X, Y, or Z? And he's like, oh yeah, let me connect you with so-and-so out east. So that's been really valuable to have that. As I mentioned, the famous word pivot, we were able to pivot with the pandemic. Much of our information we made online when we shut down in March 2020. So suddenly we put all of our orientations online. We put 2 graduations online. This past year, 2021, and also in 2020, we had virtual graduations for many of our departments, as well as the College of LSA, all had virtual graduations, all through AEM. We had no issues with scale, and our content editors were able to do most of these edits on their own. They were already trained, and if they needed help, they just popped in an open lab, and we were able to help them get the content the way they wanted it. We're now paying a lot more attention to SEO, the search engine optimization. So when you do searches for us, or certain topics, or best physics program in the US, we're seeing how we can rank higher in those search results. So we use Bright Edge software to help boost our SEO. So we take a look and do a lot of data analytics on a lot of our undergraduate websites to try and help meet their goals now. So we're using data to meet goals, something we hadn't done before previously, and with success. Museum of Natural History, they wanted more of an outreach to our community. And we saw, 1.5 times the number of visitors after they relaunched their website. We were able to see the difference in content and their marketing as well of their museums. This is part of the student life cycle. This is the alumni phase, but we publish an LSA magazine. We used to have 140,000 issues printed twice a year. Now it's solely online through our AEM templates. And really, a lot of this was outreach to alumni and donors, connecting donors with the stories, the things that were going on campus with students, and some of the great needs. Maybe we're really looking to expand this department. We're looking for new facilities. You can illustrate that through the magazine and highlighting some of the successes and some of the needs that we have both in the college. So not printing 280,000 issues a year is a cost savings, but we also see it as just as effective, being digital and being online only now. So there's no talk about going back to a print version. And to Chris's point about students feeling like the university cares about their success, we still have students that are hybrid and remote. And it's really interesting, some days students may have in-person classes, and others, the classes they have may be remote. So we've implemented Amazon Chat, Connect Chat through our AEM templates. And pretty soon, hopefully by December, our entire advising office is going to use chat to be able to connect with our students as well. So the student would go to the advising website that's in AEM, and they could initiate an authenticated chat. Again, if they're already signed into their email, they just, the advisor knows it's them, and they can begin their chat session. And a lot of times these advising sessions are really quick and easy, quick questions. So having this done remote is really a time savings for both the student. The student doesn't have to come to campus, and the advisor, doesn't have to set up a meeting and wait for the person to come in. Often it's, a 5-minute chat could solve or answer their question. We're also doing virtual tours and virtual field trips for our museums. So pre-pandemic, we never thought, maybe doing virtual field trips for students, but it's really become pretty popular. Our museums, the Natural History Museum in particular, now offers virtual field trips, and we're getting students from not just the area where we used to have, people would be bused to campus, but now from their classes, they can take a field trip through the museum. So it's definitely slightly more revenue for our museums, but also more importantly for the museum, they're reaching far more students than they ever have before. So it's been a big win making those available. So just to wrap up, I don't have a slide for this, but I thought I'd mention some things we'll be working on this year, going next year or so. We'd like to do some more personalization of content, dive even deeper into SEO. How can we make, people find our information a little bit easier, and try and look at the search terms that people are using to find us. Create more ties to other systems on campus with more dynamic data. We're implementing Name Coach software, which is a name pronunciation software. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but we're putting this on all of our digital platforms. So this is really hitting our DEI, our goals. And the professors can log in and they can see their class roster, and they'll be able to click on a little recording button and hear how a student's name is pronounced. So things like that really make even the student, again, we care about them. So they know going into the class, the professor knows how to pronounce their name properly. And we're looking at building more web applications that connect students with alumni and mentors out in the business world. So again, that life cycle piece, as a student comes in, they can connect with an alumni or some businesses that are interested in recruiting some of our students as they work through their sophomore, junior, and senior years into the workforce. So that's really all I have now. I know it was a lot, but thanks for hearing me out, and I'm happy to answer any questions either here or offline. Feel free to send me an email.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sean. I really love hearing kind of what you guys have done with this solution, but also kind of the what's next part of the conversation. We were going to open it up to the audience for Q&A, but I wanted to kind of start with one because we've known each other for a long time, and I've always felt that University of Michigan was very digital forward in their thinking. And you guys have really pushed the envelope as far as how to utilize technology within a higher education setting. But one of the things that really struck me that I thought you guys did an outstanding job at, which is probably pretty relevant to everybody on the phone, is how you brought together the community. Right? You had a lot of different stakeholders, and you talked a little bit about the you interviewed anybody who would have a piece of ownership. But in a lot of ways, you guys were really forward in your thinking of how do you centralize a web presence at a college, right, at a significant size, where traditionally, you had, I think it was 220 departments that were decentralized and kind of had their own technology and their own things going on. Can you talk a little bit about just kind of the process of getting buy-in? And what you guys did to really kind of rally the community, behind this centralized platform, and we're able to set the stage for all the great stuff that you guys have done.
Sure. Yeah. It was honestly tough, really, the first year and a half getting buy-in from everyone. When you throw out the word template, people cringe sometimes, oh, we can't be part of a template, our department's unique. There's no way we can join the system, being AEM. But really, I think we illustrated, the benefits, of course, that the departments and the college would get. The big win right off the bat was easier to edit their content and publish content, and more dynamic content too, that they were getting with AEM. And we had to hit this over and over again, having so many different code bases and so much different functionality out there. It just makes it impossible for us to support your site, so even though you're able to display content, maybe just minor changes often, from the way that we had the template set up, having a consistent framework for everybody was really a big benefit, both in terms of support and for updates. We can update your site easily, and it's not going to break like it did 2 years ago when we did an update. So going forward, we really hammered on the efficiencies, the easier content editing. And also, we had a new redesign at that point. And I should also mention, we just started, we're planning for another redesign right now. But it's really going to be easy to deploy because everybody's using the same framework and look and feel. So change the CSS files, new components, and everybody will get the same experience. And we can test it once, we know it'll work for everyone.
It's one of the things that, as we were going through the evaluation and looking at what platform is going to fit best at University of Michigan, specifically for LS&A, one of the reasons that AEM jumped out and really kind of got to the front of the list was exactly the functionality that you just talked about, right? And the ability to take and create a template that isn't going to be cookie cutter for every department, right? And it's not going to feel like fine arts is, or English is not going to feel like mathematics, right? It's not going to. Everybody can have their own flavor and still keep who they are and their voice. But in your ability to kind of create different experience fragments and different pieces of the pie that they could then kind of pick and choose from, right? And back at the time, it was before experience fragments. I like to say that you, as well as a few other customers, kind of invented experience fragments and how that's being handled now, because a lot of the stuff that you guys were doing was before it was actually a feature of AEM, and the ability to kind of pull that stuff together without, again, making it too cookie cutter of a site, right?
Right. Yeah. Our museum uses the same framework as physics, as the history of art, as the college as a whole, all using the same components and framework, but they do have different look and feels.
That's great. I do want to open it up to the audience. If there's any questions, feel free to use the chat pod, or we can certainly unmute and make this interactive. I don't want it to just be me kind of monopolizing the question. So I'll give an opportunity if anybody is in the audience wants to ask a question. So it looks like we have one in the chat pod, Sean. So can you talk about your experience in kind of the post-COVID world of education? What's the biggest difference in 2019 versus 2021, after you did that pivot in 2020?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. I mentioned some of the things that we did. It was really in 2020, we shut down in March, but we had a whole, several thousand people graduating in April. And what do you do suddenly? So yeah, we scrambled and we were able to make some pretty cool digital experiences with graduation, both in 2020 and 2021. But I guess campus is still different. Of course, we have people that are remote, but really the interesting challenge we've seen is these hybrid students that have, maybe a third of their classes online and 2/3 in person. So we've had to do some interesting things with virtual spaces where people could, they get out of their class at 11 and they have a 11:10 class that's virtual. How does a student, they're in a building somewhere and we have to set up shop for them somewhere where they can log into the laptop with some privacy around so they can interact with their class. But I guess in terms of the education as a whole, I haven't, students are still students. They're interested in the same things, but the way they're engaging with us, like I mentioned, the advisors opening up chat to all their students is really had a lot of effort on our end, but it's going to be a big win. So now there's a lot of digital, orientations being online, and so a lot of those types of things, switching from what used to be in person to some kind of digital. I can have an appointment with my advisor through, an iPad, or, going to orientation or virtual field trips. Those are things that we never had done and probably wouldn't have thought to do, maybe at some point, but that we now have in place. I'd be curious to hear what other people too may have done, experienced.
Yeah, I think one of the things that strikes me, Sean, is, and I go back to when you and the team and myself, and we were kind of going in front of the dean's group and presenting, kind of the future, right? Like how do you leverage this platform? One of the things that has continued to stick in the back of my mind is higher education is a lot different than a lot of other Adobe customers. So a lot of Adobe customers are looking at how do I get ROI, right? How do I get, pure revenue out of the platform, or frankly, how do I put butts in seats, right? And you guys were very clear in the beginning. We have all the applicants that we can handle. We certainly want to drive the right applicants and get to the right people, but we're not looking at this as a demand generation tool. We're looking at this as a community tool and a student experience tool. So it's one of the things that has always kind of resonated with me, and speaking to the dean's group and saying, well, you could look at this from fundraising or from brand awareness, and I think the dean's group philosophy was, that's not what we need, right? We need this sense of community, and we need this sense of how do we drive a better student experience. So I think it's fascinating, and I'm sure a lot of others in the room can relate. When they're looking at technology, the standard technology talk track is about invest X amount of money and make Y amount of money, or drive a certain number of qualified leads, and it's really different in education, right, Sean? So I don't know if you talk a little bit about, obviously with Adobe, but also in your technology landscape as a whole, kind of how you guys look at what your return is, and how do you kind of quantify, like, are we getting the value out of the platform?
Yeah, I think you're right on. I mean, there's no dollar figure that you can attach necessarily to a technology implementation. There were some things internally that we looked at efficiencies, in terms of, our web environment and the setup there. We have a much better web environment now. It's nearly the same cost as what we had before. So internally, there's things like that we look at when we implement things. We can do much more for the same cost or less. Those types of scenarios that we look at. But really, there's, in terms of trying to keep a pulse on things, we do a lot of surveys for everything. And we've found that, students sometimes with offers of pizza or nothing are really great at giving feedback. And
it's funny how little stuff changes from the time you're a student to the time you're an employee, right?
Right.
If you want to have a meeting, buy pizza for the room.
Right. But we've gotten a lot of great feedback. We're redoing the advising website now, and they sent out an email to students, and within 2 weeks we had about 280 replies, which was way above, the feedback that we thought we'd get. And we got some really valuable data from students there on that So once we get that feedback from students, we can take it to our CFO and say, hey, students really want this type of experience, and this is the software that can provide it. And so that's in part, how we got chat for our advisors, but we've got some other tools that we're working with for the advising site that we're able to get, several $1,000s from our CFO for. So reaching out to our audiences, I guess, is the point there, and in particular with students at this time.
Awesome. Sean, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, you mentioned kind of networking and, understanding what other universities and colleges are doing. And I think one of the things that we at Adobe and R2I would like to do is really start kind of developing out meetups and getting our customers together, and, both current customers and potential customers. And so I would love, for those in the room as a follow-up, if that's something that you're interested in, to reach out. I can certainly connect the dots. And Sean, you feel free to reach out to Sean directly. I don't need to be a middleman. But I would love to just kind of continue these sessions and have kind of more of this, one-on-one chats, but interactive with other colleges, universities. And I know, Sean, through the years, you've found that extremely beneficial as well. So I'll open that up for the audience. It's something that I know has some interest out there.
Yeah, I think right before you got on the call, Nick, I was telling the group here, it's really been a huge benefit to us. You've connected us with people over at Boston College. I think we spoke to some people at Emory. We've been working with, as we were our last big upgrade, we worked with Bowling Green because they were a step ahead of us in terms of the technology upgrade there. And they drove up, it's about an hour or so away from us, and we hosted them for a day, and our developers from both sides, we were all in a conference room. We talked marketing with their marketing folks. And again, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there's some unique challenges to universities, and you mentioned it too, Nick. So it was really great to have everybody in the room, and we all went out to lunch together, and it was really great networking there. So
that's awesome. I love hearing that. And sorry, Sean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just saying it's been a big benefit to us having those connections throughout our transformation here.
That's awesome. And I've done that drive from Ann Arbor to Bowling Green multiple times, having worked with both universities and really good folks over there as well. So I'm really glad that you guys had the opportunity to connect. And that's really what we're looking to do, is just drive those relationships and kind of get some ideas out, like, as well as, from Adobe's perspective, we want to hear feedback from, other schools. And Sean, you guys have been very valuable in providing us feedback, but we want that out from the community, what challenges you guys are facing and how we can enhance our tool sets to continue to serve higher education and do it in a way that, enhancements and R&D that we're making to the product, really has an impact on the space. So, I'll kind of wrap it up unless there's other questions in the audience. But I would love to hear from everyone out there. I'd love to make this a recurring thing and drive some of those conversations organically, even if it's not through a specified event. Certainly getting together would be great, and kind of doing this on an ongoing basis, but would love the opportunity to just hear from folks and make those connections. That being said, I thank everybody for their time today. Sean, really appreciate you sharing your experience